Now on Up North Live News at 6. Another northern Michigan community considers banning overnight camping in public areas. The effort underway across the state to improve drinking water quality and reduce lead exposure. Plus, why officials in a Benzie County Township revoked a zoning permit for a cell phone tower and what happens next.
If we could just do it here, that would save all that money.
And the owner of the AuSable River Queen asking for the community's help to get the iconic riverboat fixed.
This is Up North Live News at 6 on 7 and 4.
Petoskey is considering an ordinance that would ban overnight camping in most public land. While the draft says this targets seasonal traffic, it does admit that it could also affect people experiencing homelessness. Our Daniel Zivian was able to speak with a local shelter about that concern. He joins us live now in Petoskey. Daniel.
Yeah, Maya, I am along the bayfront where the city says conversion vans have parked in spots like these for days on end during the past 2 summers. Another problem area is along the Bear River, where city staff have apparently found tents, creating sanitary and safety concerns. But what the public is asking is these proposals an overreaction?
We need a more thoughtful, targeted approach instead of a sweeping citywide ban. This would address the issue where it's happening without impacting people across the city and folks who may be sleeping in their cars for a night or resting in between jobs or having family emergencies. Not everyone without housing is causing issues.
The city does acknowledge that concern in the meeting agenda, but at the Nehemiah project, shelter staff say it's as if the rule was already in place.
If they're not staying here in the shelter, most of the time they are outside of city limits. Either a lot of people, if they have cars, are in the Walmart parking lot, or they're behind the D&W parking or the D&W grocery store. I was unaware that this wasn't an ordinance already because most people who are homeless are already abiding by that.
Peters says that doesn't minimize the growing issue of homelessness in Petoskey. With only 30 beds, he says they hope to expand the shelter on newly acquired land.
We've actually gotten calls already from Traverse City, people wanting to come up here. So it's a growing issue in our community. We're a small shelter. We're turning away about 100. Last year, we turned away about 150 people because we didn't have the space, the bed space here.
Last night was only the first reading of the draft ordinance by City Council. We reached out to City Manager Shane Horn for comment on this proposal. We did not hear back in time for air. I'm live in Petoskey. Daniel Zivian, Up North Live News.
Well, you could soon see fewer short-term rentals in Traverse City. You're taking a live look at a public hearing on the topic hosted by the Traverse City Planning Commission. Since September, the Planning Commission has discussed adding more caps on how many short-term rentals can be in certain districts. They will have the chance tonight to recommend the caps to the City Commission. Tonight at 11, we're going to take you inside the meeting and tell you what comes next.
An update now. Prosecutors charging a Mason County man with attempted murder tonight. It's after sheriff's deputies said he stabbed his wife in the chest on Sunday, leaving her in critical condition. The man is now identified as 53-year-old Leobardo Olivares. The Mason County Sheriff's Office says his wife is recovering in a Muskegon hospital and is in stable condition at last check. Olivares' bond has been set at $500,000. As of our last update, he's still held at the Mason County Jail tonight. Deputies responded to a call Sunday at a home on West Anthony Road where they discovered the woman with a stab wound to the chest. Olivares had severe cuts on his hands.
The debate continues on a completed cell tower in Crystal Lake Township. The tower is on land owned by the city of Frankfort. Our Allie Baxter has been following this story. She joins us now live from our content center. Allie, where do things stand tonight?
Yeah, Mark, last night, Crystal Lake's Zoning Board of Appeals revoked a previously issued zoning permit for the tower. They explained the tower company leasing from the city never needed a zoning permit to build to begin with.
We believe that there's nothing wrong with cell towers. We just want cell towers to be put into the areas that the zoning ordinance says that they should be put in.
Back in January, the construction of a cell tower in Crystal Lake Township wasn't very far along. Now it's completed and towering beside Bellows Park.
Well, ever since I've been a kid, the beach has been there, the park has been there, the picnic tables, and it's a pretty important place for the community to enjoy.
The parkland was deeded to the city of Frankfort in 1938 with a restriction for public use.
They donated it for the public's use as a park. I don't think you can dispute that.
Previously, officials for the city of Frankfort said they believe the cell tower would help better communication services in the area, which they say would be a public use.
The township saying that we are hands off on this project. We're not going to say that we have any control over it because it's city-owned property. And we're saying it's not city-owned property.
Attorney Timothy Young is representing a group of families fighting to move the cell tower. He says Crystal Lake Township's hands-off excuse isn't applicable since the city leased the property to APC Towers.
Then APC Tower has to jump through all the hoops in order to get the variance and the SLUP and whatever other approvals that they would need in order to put a cell tower right next door to all the little children playing on the beach.
The township previously issued a permit for construction of the 195-foot tower. Monday night, its Zoning Board of Appeals revoked the permit
because they believed it never should have been issued.
The board directed the zoning administrator to send a letter to the city of Frankfort saying again, the city is exempt from zoning rules.
I mean, if you take that logic to its to an extent where, you know, the city could be running a nuclear dump on that park and the township would say they don't have any say in it.
I did reach out to Frankfort officials today. The superintendent tells me the city hasn't received the letter of exemption from the township yet, but he anticipates this will not affect the city's lease with the tower company. As of now, the tower is not operational. Live in the Content Center, Allie Baxter, back to you.
Nearly $15 million has been requested by a Michigan lawmaker to assist with infrastructure improvements in Cadillac, such as its failing culverts. Representative Joseph Fox requested that $2 million of that funding go toward fixing the culverts by Wexford Jewelers. Wexford Jewelers owner says this funding would go for replacing the 2 culverts in the parking lot next to his business that have caused several large holes to appear. We're told the new culverts would also have a 70 to 90-year lifespan. Almost $8 million would go towards assisting hundreds of residents with PFAS-contaminated wells get connected to municipal water. And lastly, the request would use $5 million for the Lake Mitchell Sewer Authority to update and replace 140 grinder pump stations.
I'll drive through a Traverse City neighborhood over the next several months, and you may see a fair amount of somewhat unusual activity, a lot of digging, and a lot of new pipes being installed at homes and businesses. It's something the city is tackling. And if you're a municipal water system in the state of Michigan, yours will be as well.
So today we are changing this water line. It was an old galvanized line.
If you drove down Front Street in Traverse City this morning, you may have seen Jackson and the crew digging and laying down shiny new pipe. Something they're getting pretty used to here in town.
We did 237 last year. We did 130 the year before. And I believe we're slated to do another 130 or so this year.
This is what they're replacing, a 3-foot chunk of lead pipe called a gooseneck, used for decades as a transition between the brass connection to the water main and a threaded galvanized pipe.
In 2017, when the lead and copper rule was passed by the state of Michigan, they were giving communities 20 years to complete all of the service changeouts.
This little chunk of pipe could introduce lead into the water, so the state set rules that municipal water systems had to replace them. It's not just a Traverse City thing.
That's right. It has to be done everywhere, wherever the state has allocated money to have it done. Cities around the state should be getting started on it.
The state gave utilities 20 years to get the work like this done. Traverse City could be done in 8 years' time.
With our rate of replacements going on, we're well ahead of that curve. We're hoping to be done in the next few years.
That's a lot of 3-foot chunks of pipe at a lot of addresses that need to be dug up, replaced, and replumbed.
It gets a little bit redundant at times, but that's a good thing when everything's going smoothly.
A big job and a big price tag. The city's received more than $3.5 million in grant money to help cover some of the costs, and a $3.5 million EPA loan. Traverse City doesn't have lead pipes per se.
It is definitely not a Flint situation.
And doing this work, while required by law, isn't being driven by results of water testing.
Hitting those numbers, 95 percentile and below. So there's not a crisis for sure, but it is a precautionary measure.
Removing these addresses the new mandated requirements and ensures continued safe drinking water for the future. But customers may notice another benefit almost instantaneously at their sink or in their shower.
Flow is a big factor. Galvanized pipe over time corrodes from the inside, so it's almost like getting hardening of the arteries over time. Particulate minerals, things can build up inside that pipe, so you don't get the clean, full flow out of galvanized pipe, especially if it's been on the ground, 50 years or more.
Another tip from the water experts: if you leave on vacation or don't use your water for a while, sediment can settle out. Their advice: run your water for a bit to flush out anything that may have accumulated before you drink or use that water for cooking.
The owners of the AuSable River Queen in Oscoda have launched a petition urging the township to allow them to rebuild at Footsite Park. After being pulled out of Footsite Pond back in March, the AuSable River Queen has remained in the parking lot. The owners were ordered by the township to remove the boat 2 weeks after it was pulled from the river, but that did not happen. The owners have now started a petition asking for the township and Consumers Energy, which owns the property, to allow them to rebuild the River Queen on site.
The problem is if we can't fix it here, then we have to take off the entire upper deck. If we could just do it here, that would save all that money from hauling it.
There would be a variety of issues that would have to be addressed. Site security, there's concern about the vessel impeding use of a very heavily used public site. We would need to know a work schedule, a permitting process would have to be completed, and we've to date not received any of that.
Chattel says the vessel is a blighted structure and the owners will continue to be cited.
It's election night in Michigan. The scene in Antrim County, the Elk Rapids Chamber Governmental Center, as locals turned out to cast their ballots today. Today, voters weighing in on issues ranging from school maintenance to big-time community initiatives before the polls close tonight at 8 o'clock. And as those numbers are tallied, the results can also be found at your fingertips on our website. You can scroll through the dozens of races we're tracking tonight and see the numbers as they come in. Again, that's UpNorthLive.com. Just click on the menu icon, then news and election results.
Some areas seeing their second day of rain today, but it's probably going to be a while till we see any more. All that after the break.
I'm Jada Johnson from Big Boys TV, and the Fish and Game Report is sponsored by Johnson's Propane.